AFR On Demand is brought to you by Breck Golf. Try Beaver Creek today, just 20 minutes from downtown Baton Rouge in the Zachary area. They've got a PGA Tour driving range, a short game practice area, 30 to 40-yard practice shots. It's a great place to chip and putt and practice if you don't have time for a full round. Book your tee time today, golf.breck.org, golf.breck.org.
After further review with Matt Moscona, presented by Don Juan Cigar Bar, ESPN Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Alexandria.
Another Football Friday, another opportunity to chat with Phil Steele. Of course, the Phil Steele College Football Preview Magazine, the Phil Steele Plus Tour at the Phil Steele YouTube channel and philsteele.com, and pretty much anything else football-related you need Phil Steele, and he's with us every Friday. Phil, how are you, man?
Doing really good, Matt. How about yourself?
We're doing well. LSU's 1-1, and hopefully they have another layup this week, but we'll get to that in a bit. Phil, I want to start with what I think is the biggest game in the country, and that's Auburn going to Happy Valley. I think we're going to find out, is Auburn for real after 2 blowout wins the first 2 weeks of the season?
Yeah, and, you have to, of course, look at the opponents that Auburn played, and Akron and Alabama State are not exactly powerhouses. But you have to be impressed with the almost 600 yards offense, 60 points per game they've been putting up. But this is going to be a completely different environment. And we've seen it out of Bo Nix his entire career so far. At home, he's unbelievable. 20 touchdown passes, 1 interception, and Auburn has a potent offense. But on the road, 12 touchdown passes, 12 interceptions. And you talk about a road environment. This is whiteout conditions at night in Happy Valley against a very good Penn State defense, one that he hasn't faced so far this year. Penn State's got the run game. They go about 4 deep at running back. They've got a very dangerous receiver in Jahan Dotson. And Sean Clifford looks much more like the 2019 Sean Clifford than last year's version. So add it all up, I think Penn State's a better team. They're at home. It's whiteout conditions. I like them to win this one by more than a touchdown.
Phil, what about down in Gainesville? Alabama's going to go on the road to Florida. Better than a 2-touchdown line right now. We saw this in the SEC championship game. Of course, Kyle Trask was there, and it was a really close ball game. This one feels really different. Why does this one feel like it might not be competitive, Phil?
Yeah, I think we still have some question marks when it comes to Florida. You look at them last year defensively, they were not great. They gave up 428 yards per game. So far this year, they've taken on a below-average USF team and then a little above average Florida Atlantic team. They've looked fairly good in the first 2 games, but have not covered either game. And I think that's one of the reasons that they're flying very much under the radar. They do have 2 good quarterbacks, Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson. It'll be interesting to see how they fare against an Alabama defense, which is vastly improved with 8 starters back this year. Bama might be without a couple of outside linebackers, but they're extremely deep there. And it is Bryce Young's first road start. So I think when we look at this matchup, I can see Florida making a game of it with the home crowd there. But I got to go with the Tide. I'll lay the 14 and a half in this one. I like Bama to win this one by about 3 touchdowns.
Phil Steele on Twitter at PhilSteele042. It's not a ranked matchup, Phil, but there's one more in the SEC that I want to ask you about. And it's Mississippi State going on the road to Memphis, because this looks to me, well, of course, LSU is going to play State next week. Could this be maybe that trap game for State, coming off an emotional win, looking ahead maybe to LSU on the road against Memphis? The line's only 3.5 State favorite. Is this a trap spot for Mississippi State?
It's definitely a dangerous game, especially with LSU on deck. And, you look at Memphis, they did lose their expected quarterback. And Seth Hennigan's come in and fared extremely well. He's got 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Brandon Thomas running the ball. He's had in the first game 147, then against Arkansas State 191. Now, granted, this is not Nichols. This is not Arkansas State. They're taking on a much tougher D, but they are averaging 634 yards per game. They're an outstanding team at home. They rarely lose there in the Liberty Bowl. Mississippi State should have a good crowd. These schools are fairly close to each other. So I do like Mississippi State to come out of there with the win, but I think when you look at Memphis, they are a very dangerous team and at home for this one.
Of course, we'll be previewing LSU and Mississippi State when Phil's with us next week, with us every Friday here on our Football Friday edition of AFR. Make sure you're subscribed up to the Phil Steele Plus Tour, or the Phil Steele YouTube channel, where you can get the Phil Steele Plus Tour every Friday. Phil will tell us more about that coming up here in just a quick minute. There's one other ranked-on-ranked matchup, Phil. It's not in the SEC. It's out west, and I love the night games, man. I love when I finish post-game for LSU, and I still got some football on. Arizona State on the road in Provo against BYU. Number 19 Sun Devils, the number 23 Cougars. Short line, what do we think of this one, Phil?
We're going to find out if Arizona State's for real. Remember last year, they only played 4 games. Their final 2 games, they were dominant against Arizona and Oregon State. They returned Rashad White and Trainum, their running backs, Jaden Daniels back at QB. But so far, they've been sort of average. They're always been dominant. Now, BYU surprised me last week. I thought Utah would go in there, win for the 10th straight time in that series, and BYU pulled the upset and ran the ball well on a very good Utah defense. They ran for 219 yards, 4.8 yards per carry. They did lead Arizona 21-3 in the opener. They've got the altitude advantage. They're at home. And I think now they have a bigger belief that they can actually win this game after what they did to Utah last week. So add it all up, it wouldn't surprise me at all if BYU pulls the upset here. I think it'd be a great game to watch, but I'm going to go with BYU plus the points as the home dog.
I will certainly be locked into that one. Phil, a team that did nearly get upset last week is Notre Dame. On the ropes against Toledo, kind of needed a miracle late. They're back at home against Purdue. For a team that was preseason top 10 and many thought could be a playoff contender, they certainly haven't looked like it through 2 weeks. So what kind of challenge does Purdue present this week going to South Bend?
You know, Purdue has looked good so far. Jack Plummer is now in his 3rd year in the system, and he's adapted well. He's hitting 74%. He's got 6 touchdowns, has 0 interceptions. They still lack that feature running back. Xander Horvath was the top guy. He's injured. He'll be out this week. But they do have David Bell back, and the defense is playing well, giving up under 300 yards per game. Notre Dame might have been in a little bit of a flat spot last week, coming off that big emotional game against Florida State, overtime win, and being a large home favorite. I think we'll see a better Notre Dame this week. But I think Purdue's going to give them a challenge. So this game, I rate a toss-up, and that's as far as the spread goes. I think Notre Dame comes out of there with a win, but I see them winning somewhere between the 7 and 10 points that Vegas has it.
Phil, what do you make of teams like Southern Cal when they lose a coach midseason? It's an interesting spot for USC. In conference, going up to Pullman against Washington State now without Clay Helton. So do you have any sort of barometer for how to gauge what a team does when their coach is fired midseason?
Generally, teams come out and play that first game really good, and then it's probably a little bit of a struggle after that. I don't see USC improving without Clay Helton on the sideline. I don't think it's going to be a great season for them whatsoever, but they do have a chance to get things turned around in the short term with Washington State here, Oregon State the next week, and then Colorado. 3 very winnable games for them. So they need to take advantage of that. They may get that interim head coach bounce, but also the players on the team were somewhat upset. I don't know what we're going to see out of USC this week. And Washington State can be dangerous. Remember, I know they lost to Utah State in the opener, but they led that thing 23-11 or something like that in the fourth quarter and suffered a late loss. Last week they gave up some late points to Portland State. Were better than the score would indicate. They've got good running backs in Borghi and McIntosh. So I think USC is going to have their hands full on the road against Washington State this week. I like the Trojans, though, to come out with a straight-up win.
Got 2 more for you, Phil. Let me ask you about the game here in Baton Rouge. LSU is about a 3-touchdown favorite over Central Michigan. The line might be somewhere around 19.5 right now. But Jim McElwain coming to Baton Rouge, and the way LSU struggled in the opener defensively against UCLA, there's some apprehension here, Phil, that maybe a good offensive coach like Jim McElwain might scheme the Chippewas into this ball game. What do you see when you break down LSU and Central Michigan?
I think Central Michigan's going to make a game of it. You go back and you take a look at the fact that Central Michigan is 19-8 against the spread as an away dog. Orgeron, middle of the road, 50% as a home favorite. Central Michigan went into Missouri in the opening game of the season. They had a 475 to 466 yard edge, so they played even better than the final score would indicate. And LSU's got some major revenge game on deck against Mississippi State. That's a game that just was embarrassing last year. They need to play well next week against Mississippi State. They're a large favorite, something they don't do very well in. I think Central Michigan keeps this one under the number. I don't see Central Michigan pulling an upset. LSU should get to 2-1. But I like Central Michigan to keep this one closer than the Vegas odds makers have it.
Phil, before we tell them all about the Phil Steele Plus Tour, is there a game on the Phil Steele Plus Tour that today that I haven't asked about, a play maybe that you really like this weekend that we haven't touched on?
Yeah, I guess let's take a look at the Fresno State UCLA game. And on Phil Steele Plus, it's got the average game grade for each team. And UCLA's been very impressive so far. They come up with a 114.9 average game in the country. They have played like the 12th best team in the country. But under the radar is this Fresno State team. And Fresno State's a team that has played to 112.4 average game grade, the 18th best in the country. Remember, they led Oregon 24-21 in the fourth quarter. Everybody thought, well, maybe Oregon's not that good. Well, now Oregon is that good. They shut out Connecticut. They blew out got a quarterback in a Washington transfer, Jake Hayner, who's got an 8-0 ratio. They've got a dynamic running back in Ronnie Rivers. Fresno State's a team that does extremely well as a dog. They're 8-2 against the spread as an away dog. Chip Kelly, meanwhile, just 3-6 as a home favorite. The average game grade says UCLA should be about a 5-point favorite. And one final factor, I found about a 64% UCLA's ranked and playing for the first time in 4 years. So it's been a long time. They've had a lot of people patting them on the back. And Fresno State's getting 11 points in this one. I like the underdog Fresno State to take this one to the wire.
Certainly, UCLA team LSU fans became well acquainted with in the opener. So for Phil likes Fresno State. Of course, you can get explanations like that on the Phil Steele Plus Tour at the Phil Steele YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Phil, walk us through the Phil Steele Plus Tour and everything people get when they go there.
Yeah, when you get the Phil Steele Plus Tour, it shows you how to use Phil Steele Plus. But more importantly, even if you don't have Phil Steele Plus, it gives you a lot of information. I give you a selection, and then I give you the reasons behind the selection. Generally, there's 3, 4, 5 of them, and you could see it right on your computer, the exact numbers I'm talking about and everything that goes with it. So last week we gave out 10 free plays, went 7-3 on them.
Oh, is that good?
Stupid Hawaii gave up. Yeah, Hawaii gave up a touchdown in the final 2 minutes of the game, which cost me one of those. But we got 8 plays up there this week for free on the Phil Steele Plus Tour.
Y'all go cash some tickets. And, of course, if you need college football or any football info, Phil Steele is the best way to get it. PhilSteele.com. You can order the magazine there. You can pick it up at Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, PhilSteele.com, STEELE, and get to YouTube. Subscribe to the Phil Steele YouTube channel. Hit the bell so you're notified when he posts, because when the Phil Steele Plus Tour goes live on Friday, you're going to want it to place your wagers if you're doing so. Phil, we appreciate you as always, man. We'll do it again next Friday.
Sounds great, Matt. We got a big game to talk about next week, that's for sure.